You useless child. Take this water and learn your place.
Please stop, I'm sorry.
Useless, you are nothing. What are you doing to her? Get out of my house, Amara. I don't want to see your face again. Get out of my house now.
Auntie, please. I swear I didn't do it. Please believe me.
Liar, I said get out.
Please, Auntie.
Enough. Since the day you came into this house, you've brought nothing but shame and bad luck.
Auntie, I have no place to go.
Then go. Get out of my sight.
Listen, come closer. Let me tell you a story. A story about a girl named Amara. A girl who lost her parents, lost her home, lost the boy she loved, and almost lost her future. They called her cursed. They called her bad luck. They called her worthless. Every day, she was treated like a servant in the house she called home. Then one cruel lie destroyed everything she had worked for. Her family abandoned her. Her boyfriend turned his back on her. The whole community believed she was guilty. But what happened years later left everyone speechless. Because the same girl they mocked and threw away became the woman they could never ignore. This is Amara's story. Broken heart, crying face. The sun had not even risen yet, but Amara was already on her knees scrubbing the floor. Her small hands were red and sore. Her back ached. Her eyes were still heavy with sleep. But she could not stop. If she stopped, Auntie Beatrice would scream. And when Auntie Beatrice screamed, it felt like the whole world was against you. Amara was only 16 years old, but she carried the weight of someone who had lived 100 hard years. It had not always been this way. There was a time when Amara had a warm bed, a soft pillow, and a mother who would sing to her every night before she slept. There was a time when her father would carry her on his shoulders and call her his sunshine. But that time felt like a dream now, a beautiful dream that had been stolen from her. 2 years ago, her parents had been coming home from a trip when their car was hit by a truck on a rainy night. They never came back. Amara lost everything in one phone call. After the funeral, the family gathered and decided that Amara would go and live with her mother's sister, Auntie Beatrice. Everyone said Auntie Beatrice was doing a great and kind thing by taking her in. But behind closed doors, the truth was very different. From the first night Amara arrived, Auntie Beatrice made it clear that she was not a guest. She was not even family. She was a burden. You brought bad luck into this house, Auntie Beatrice told her on the very first morning. Your parents died and left their trouble for me. So you will work for every cup of rice you eat in this house. And so Amara's life became a cycle of pain. Wake up at 4 in the morning. Sweep the compound. Mop the floors. Cook breakfast. Wash clothes. Go to the market. Then run to school, always late, always tired, always with chalk dust on her uniform because she had no time to iron it properly. Auntie Beatrice's own children, Temi and Kola, slept until 7. They had new shoes. They had pocket money. They had a mother who loved them. Amara had nothing but her books and a quiet fire burning inside her that refused to go out. Before we begin, if you love emotional stories filled with betrayal, karma, shocking twists, and life-changing lessons, make sure you subscribe and turn on the notification bell. We share powerful stories like this every week, and you don't want to miss them. Now, let's begin. Even with all her suffering at home, something amazing happened when Amara walked through the school gate. It was like she became a different person. The exhaustion on her face disappeared, replaced by focus and fire. She sat at the front of every class. She answered questions no one else could answer. She stayed back during lunch to read when other students were playing. Her teachers noticed. Her classmates noticed. And slowly, quietly, Amara became the student everyone talked about. Her English teacher, Mr. Bello, once stopped the entire class and said, "This girl writes like she has lived 10 lives." He read her essay aloud, and for a moment, the class was completely silent. Even the stubborn boys at the back stopped whispering. It was the kind of silence that comes when something true is spoken. Amara sat in her chair with her eyes down, but inside her chest, a small warm light glowed. It was the first time in a long time that she had felt seen. It was in that same class that she first noticed Brian. He was tall, quiet, and always carried a novel under his arm. He was not loud like the other boys. He did not try to show off. He simply sat and listened and sometimes wrote things in a small notebook that he never showed anyone. After class one afternoon, he walked up to Amara and said, "Your essay was the best thing I've heard all year." She looked at him, surprised. "You really think so?" she asked. He smiled and said, "I don't say things I don't mean." That was the beginning of something soft and new between them. But not everyone was happy for Amara. On the other side of the classroom sat Vanessa, the daughter of a powerful and wealthy man in the community. Vanessa was beautiful, well-dressed, and used to being the center of attention. She had the latest phone, the shiniest hair, and friends who laughed at everything she said. But lately, the attention was shifting. Students were talking about Amara more. Teachers were praising Amara more. And now, the quiet boy she had been admiring from a distance, Brian, was smiling at Amara like she was something special. Vanessa folded her arms and watched. And deep inside her, something dark and dangerous began to grow. Vanessa was not the kind of person who showed her anger openly. She was too smart for that. Instead, she smiled. She walked up to Amara one afternoon with her best friend Grace beside her and said, "I've been watching you, Amara. You're really intelligent. We should be friends." Amara was surprised but grateful. She had very few friends, and the idea of being accepted by someone like Vanessa felt good. She smiled back and said, "Thank you. I'd like that." Grace smiled too, but her smile did not reach her eyes. For 2 weeks, Vanessa was kind to Amara. She shared her lunch. She invited her to sit at their table. She asked her questions about school and listened carefully to every answer. But all this time, Vanessa was not being kind, she was studying Amara. She was learning her weaknesses, her routines, her fears. She noticed that Amara had no one powerful in her corner. No rich parents. No strong family name. Just a tired girl with good grades and a warm heart. And Vanessa thought to herself, she has nothing to protect her. This will be easy. One evening, Grace came to Vanessa's house and they sat together with the door locked. "I have a plan," Vanessa said, her voice low and cold. "Amara is writing the regional scholarship exam next week. If she wins that scholarship, she gets to go to the best school in the country for free. Brian will definitely follow her there. I can't let that happen." Grace shifted uncomfortably. "But what can we do?" she asked. Vanessa smiled a slow, dangerous smile. "We are going to make sure everyone thinks she cheated. We are going to take away everything she worked for. And when she has nothing left, let's see if Brian still looks at her the same way." The plan was simple but wicked. Vanessa used her father's money to bribe a student who worked in the school office. She got a copy of Amara's draft answers. Then she printed fake photos and forged fake documents that made it look like Amara had been given the exam questions before the test. She made it look like Amara had paid someone to help her cheat. Grace delivered the fake evidence to the teachers anonymously, slipping it under the staff room door in a brown envelope with Amara's name written across the front. Then they both sat back and waited for the fire they had started to burn. The next morning, Amara arrived at school the same way she always did, tired from morning chores, uniform slightly wrinkled, bag on her shoulder, mind already thinking about the day's lessons. But something felt different. Students were staring at her. Some were whispering behind their hands. Some were laughing. She walked to her classroom and sat down, confused. Then Sandra, her only true friend, rushed in and grabbed her arm. "Amara," she said, her voice shaking, "something bad is happening. People are saying you cheated in the exam." Amara felt the blood drain from her face. "What?" That's not true. I would never, but Sandra cut her off. I know that. But they have papers. Photos. Someone submitted evidence to the teachers. Mr. Bello has called for a disciplinary meeting this afternoon. Amara's heart dropped to the floor. She sat frozen in her chair as the world around her seemed to tilt. How could this be happening? She had studied so hard. She had woken up before sunrise every single day for weeks to read her notes. She had done everything on her own. And now someone was saying she cheated. The disciplinary meeting was the worst afternoon of her life. She sat in front of 5 teachers, including the principal, and listened as they read out the accusations against her. She tried to explain. She cried. She begged them to look at the evidence more carefully. But the documents looked real. The photos looked real. And when several students came forward, students that Vanessa had coached, and said they had seen Amara behaving suspiciously, the teachers began to shake their heads. The principal looked at her with disappointed eyes. "We expected better from you, Amara," he said, and those words cut deeper than any slap. By evening, the news had traveled out of the school gates. Phones were buzzing. Messages were flying. By the time Amara walked home, Auntie Beatrice was already standing at the door with her arms crossed and her eyes full of fire. "I heard what you did," she said, before Amara could even open her mouth. "I took you in out of the goodness of my heart, and this is how you repay me. Bringing shame into my house." Amara tried to speak. "Auntie, please listen to me." "I didn't," but Auntie Beatrice raised her hand. "Pack your things," she said quietly. "You are not sleeping under my roof tonight." Amara stood outside the gate with a small bag at her feet. The night air was cool and the street was quiet. She had nowhere to go. Her phone had only a little battery left. She sat down on the edge of the road and cried, not the soft, polite kind of crying she usually did in her room to avoid making noise. This was the kind of crying that comes from the deepest place inside a person, when everything they held onto has been taken at once. She cried for her parents. She cried for the life she had been building. She cried for the version of herself that still believed things would get better. Then her phone buzzed. It was Sandra. "Where are you?" "I've been calling." Amara typed back her location with trembling fingers. 20 minutes later, Sandra appeared around the corner with a sweater in one hand and food wrapped in foil in the other. She sat down beside Amara on the cold ground, put the sweater around her shoulders, and said nothing for a while. Sometimes silence between two people says more than any words can. Then Sandra spoke softly. "You're not alone. You will never be alone while I'm here." The next day, Brian saw Amara at a distance and crossed to the other side of the road. She called his name. He stopped, turned, looked at her, and then kept walking. That moment shattered something in her that she was not sure could be repaired. She had thought he knew her. She had thought he trusted her. But without a single question, without even one conversation, he had chosen to believe a rumor over the girl he had held hands with. It was a pain that sat differently from all the others, quieter, but deeper. Sandra's mother, a kind and generous woman, agreed to let Amara stay with them temporarily. But she was honest, the house was small and money was tight. "We can only keep you for a few weeks," she told Amara gently. "But use this time to figure out your next step." Amara nodded. That night, she lay on a thin mat on the floor of Sandra's room and stared at the ceiling. She had been stripped of her reputation, her home, her relationship, and her future in the space of 48 hours. But something stubborn was still alive inside her. A voice that whispered, "This is not your ending." Before we continue, let me ask you something. If you were in Amara's position, and everyone turned their back on you for something you didn't do, what would you do? Let me know in the comments. And if you're enjoying this story so far, don't forget to subscribe because the truth is about to come out, and you won't believe what happens next. Sandra's cousin lived in the city and offered to let Amara stay with her in exchange for helping with childcare and light house chores, work Amara already knew how to do better than most adults. So Amara packed her small bag one more time, said goodbye to Sandra with a long, tearful hug, and boarded a bus to the city. It was the longest journey of her life, not because of the distance, but because of what she was leaving behind and the uncertainty of what lay ahead. The city was loud and fast and did not care who you were or where you came from. Amara found that both terrifying and freeing. She registered for evening school classes while working small jobs during the day, cleaning offices, selling food for a woman at the market, helping a tailor deliver fabrics. She was always tired. But she was always moving. Every evening, she opened her books. Every morning, she told herself the same thing: I am not what they said I am. One afternoon, while delivering a package to a large business building in the city center, Amara made a mistake and got into the wrong elevator. She ended up on the executive floor and walked straight into a meeting room, package in hand, mortified. The men at the table looked at her. She apologized quickly and turned to leave. But one man said, "Wait." His name was Mr. Kingsley Okafor, a businessman known for building companies from nothing. He had noticed the way she carried herself even in embarrassment, composed, respectful, and quick-thinking. "What is your name?" he asked. She told him. "And what do you do?" She told him that too, all of it, honestly. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Come back tomorrow morning at 9. I'd like to give you an opportunity." She almost did not go. She told herself he probably forgot. She told herself it was too good to be true. But Sandra called her that night and said, "Amara, you've spent your whole life showing up for people who didn't deserve it. Now show up for yourself." So at 8:45 the next morning, Amara stood in front of that building in her cleanest clothes, heart pounding. Mr. Okafor did not forget. He offered her an entry-level position in his company and access to a sponsored educational program for talented young people. "I don't know your full story," he told her, "but I know hard work when I see it. And I know potential when it walks into my meeting room." The years that followed were not easy, but they were purposeful. Amara threw herself into every opportunity Mr. Okafor gave her with the same fire she had once poured into her school notebooks. She studied in the evenings, worked during the day, and slowly, steadily, she began to rise. She completed her professional certifications. She got promoted twice. She began managing a small team. The girl who had been thrown out of her aunt's house with a single bag was now walking into boardrooms in sharp clothes and steady shoes. Back in the town she had come from, life had continued without her. Vanessa had moved on, assuming her plan had worked perfectly, and Amara was long forgotten. Brian had graduated and taken a quiet job. Auntie Beatrice still ran her household with an iron hand. Temi and Kola had grown up. And Grace, quiet, guilty Grace, had never quite been able to enjoy the life she was living. Every time she laughed, she remembered Amara's face the day everything fell apart. Every time she lay down to sleep, she heard the echo of a girl crying on the side of a road. Grace had tried to bury the secret. She had told herself it was all Vanessa's idea, that she had just been a follower, that Amara was probably fine now anyway. But guilt is a strange creature. It does not die when you ignore it. It grows. It gets louder. It starts showing up in your dreams and sitting beside you at breakfast and whispering in your ear when the house is quiet. Grace began losing sleep. She stopped eating well. She grew distant from her friends. The secret she had swallowed years ago was now poisoning her from the inside. Meanwhile, Amara had begun to think less about the past and more about the future. She had not forgiven everything. Some wounds take time, but she had stopped letting the pain drive her. She had Sandra. She had her work. She had the slow, quiet satisfaction of becoming someone she was proud of. One evening, sitting on the balcony of her small apartment in the city, watching the lights of the buildings flicker on one by one, she said to herself softly, "They said I was worthless. Look at me now." 3 years after Amara had left, Grace fell seriously ill. It came suddenly, a sickness that the doctors could not fully explain, but that Grace herself believed was connected to something heavier than her body. She lost weight rapidly. She could barely get out of bed. Her mother prayed over her. Her friends visited and left looking scared. And in those long, dark hours of lying still and staring at the ceiling, Grace kept seeing one face. Amara. One evening, Grace called Vanessa. "I need to talk to you," she said. Her voice was thin and shaking. Vanessa, who had moved to a new city and built a comfortable life, sighed on the other end of the phone. "Grace, what is it now?" Grace was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "I can't keep this secret anymore. I feel like it's killing me." Vanessa's voice dropped to ice. "Don't you dare," she said. "Do you know what you would be destroying? My reputation. My family's name. Everything." Grace closed her eyes. "I'm sorry, Vanessa," she whispered. "I'm so sorry." And she ended the call. The next week, Grace wrote a full confession, every detail of the plan, every step Vanessa had taken, every lie they had told. She wrote it clearly and completely, with names and dates and descriptions of evidence that had been faked. She sent copies to the school, to the community leaders, and to Brian. Then she posted it publicly for everyone to see. Within hours, it spread the same way the lie had once spread, fast, wide, and unstoppable. But this time, what was spreading was the truth. The reaction was immediate and enormous. Former classmates who had mocked Amara went quiet with shame. Teachers who had doubted her felt the weight of regret settle on their shoulders. Auntie Beatrice read the confession and had to sit down because her legs stopped working. Brian read it 3 times, then sat alone in his room and put his face in his hands. And Vanessa received a call from her father that night, asking her to explain herself, and for the first time in her life, she had no clever words ready. The truth reached Amara through Sandra, who called her at 7 in the morning, voice high and excited and cracking. "Amara. It's out." Grace confessed. "Everyone knows." Amara sat very still on the edge of her bed, phone against her ear, and said nothing for a long moment. She had imagined this day before, late at night when old pain came back to visit. She had imagined how it would feel. She thought it would feel like thunder. Like fire. Like revenge exploding across the sky. But sitting there in the quiet of her morning, she felt something much softer. She felt free. One by one, people came. Auntie Beatrice showed up at the address Sandra gave her, dressed neatly as if that would undo years of cruelty. She knocked on Amara's door with her hands folded and her eyes wet. "I should have believed you," she said, her voice cracking. "I should have listened." Amara looked at the woman who had made her wake up at 4 in the morning, who had called her bad luck, who had thrown her out into the night with nowhere to go. And she took a slow, deep breath. "You should have," Amara said quietly. "But I don't need an apology to be okay. I've been okay for a while now." She did not slam the door. She did not shout. She simply told the truth, and closed the door softly. Brian came too. He stood outside her building looking smaller than she remembered, smaller and sorrier. He had written a long message on his phone that he wanted to read to her, full of explanations and regrets. But when Amara came downstairs and stood in front of him, he forgot all his prepared words. He just said, "I'm sorry. I should have stood by you." Amara nodded slowly. "Yes," she said. "You should have." Then she looked at him without anger, without tears, without longing. "Take care of yourself, Brian," she said. And she walked back inside. Not because she was heartbroken, but because she had outgrown the wound. As for Vanessa, her father's reputation took a severe blow from the public confession, and Vanessa lost the social standing she had spent her whole life protecting. But the most poetic justice of all came at a business conference in the city, 6 months after the confession, the biggest event of the year in her industry. Amara walked into that conference as one of the keynote speakers, invited by Mr. Okafor's company, dressed in a deep burgundy suit that she had bought with her own money from her own account. And sitting in the fourth row of the audience, smaller and quieter than she had ever been in her life, was Vanessa. Their eyes met across the room. Vanessa looked away first. Amara stepped to the podium, adjusted the microphone, and smiled. Not a cruel smile. Not a triumphant smile. Just a real one, the smile of a woman who had walked through fire and come out warm. She spoke for 30 minutes that day about resilience, about truth, and about what happens when you refuse to let cruelty have the final word. The audience gave her a standing ovation. And when she walked off the stage, Sandra was waiting in the wings, crying happy tears. Amara pulled her into a long hug and laughed. Outside the windows of that grand hall, the sun was setting in brilliant orange, the same color, some said, as the fire that had once tried to destroy her. Only now, that fire belonged to her. And she wore it beautifully. Broken heart fire. If this story touched your heart, take a moment to subscribe and join our family. Stories like Amara's remind us that kindness is never wasted, the truth always finds a way out, and those who hurt others will eventually face the consequences of their actions. Also, leave a comment below and tell us, what lesson did you learn from Amara's journey? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Until next time, stay kind, stay strong, and never stop believing in yourself.